The Israelites lived in oppressive slavery in Egypt for generations, initially seeking refuge and prosperity, but eventually becoming prisoners of a regime that subjected them to forced labor. This harsh reality led the people to cry out to God for deliverance, a cry of despair from a people who felt their identity and faith were being crushed under Pharaoh's rule. The Israelites were seen as a threat due to their increasing numbers, leading Pharaoh to take even harsher measures against them. Moses was born at a time of great danger for the Israelites, when Pharaoh had decreed that all male babies should be killed. Moses was saved by his mother, who placed him in a basket in the Nile River, and he was raised by Pharaoh's daughter. Despite this, Moses never lost his connection with the Hebrew people and was constantly drawn to the afflictions of his brothers. Moses was not just a political leader, but also the mediator between God and the people of Israel. His life was a series of divine preparations for the moment when he would receive the Ten Commandments, the moral code that would shape Israel's identity as a nation under God. His leadership was fundamental not only in the physical liberation of the Israelites, but also in the spiritual and legal formation that followed. In the desert of Midian, Moses saw a burning bush without being consumed, which led him to approach Exodus 33. God revealed himself to Moses and gave him the mission to confront Pharaoh and lead the people out of Egypt. Moses' calling on Mount Horeb marked the start of the liberation and established the foundation for the giving of the Ten Commandments. God sent a series of 10 devastating plagues upon Egypt, each blow against the Egyptian deities and natural forces that the Egyptian people worshipped. These plagues demonstrated the supreme power of God and the need for the Ten Commandments to be delivered. The plagues set the stage for the delivery of the Ten Commandments, which would serve as the foundation for Israel's new life as a free nation. Passover was not just a protection event, but a powerful symbol of God's deliverance to Israel, marking the beginning of a new identity for the people. It was so significant that God commanded it to be celebrated annually to ensure future generations would never forget how God delivered them from slavery. Passover also foreshadowed the sacrifice of Christ in the New Testament, establishing a profound connection between the Old and New covenants. After the Israelites left Egypt, they began their journey to freedom, which was the precursor to the giving of the Ten Commandments. This event was not only the physical liberation, but also the beginning of a new covenant that would be formalized at Mount Sinai. After the final plague, Pharaoh eventually allowed the Israelites to leave Egypt, but later regretted his decision and sent his army to pursue them as they approached the Red Sea. At this moment of desperation, God performed a miracle that separated the waters, creating a dry path for the Israelites to cross. This event secured the Israelites' freedom and strengthened their faith in God's protection and leadership. The crossing of the Red Sea symbolized the beginning of a new era for Israel, where dependence on God would be fundamental to their survival and success. Trust in God would be essential for the acceptance and living of the Ten Commandments. The journey through the desert was marked by numerous challenges, such as the lack of water, manna, and quails. These trials served to purify Israel, teaching them to trust in God for every need. After 3 months of journeying through the desert, the Israelites arrived at the foot of Mount Sinai, where God instructed Moses to make a covenant with them. The people were instructed to consecrate themselves and prepare to meet the Lord, who would descend upon Mount Sinai in a powerful manifestation. This moment marked the beginning of the formal relationship between God and Israel, requiring loyalty and obedience from both parties. The Ten Commandments were not just moral guidelines, but also a code reflecting God's holiness and justice. They established the basic principles that guided the behavior of the Israelites in relation to God and one another. The first group focused on the relationship with God, while the second group focused on interpersonal relationships. The commandments were clear, straightforward, and comprehensive, covering all aspects of the people's lives. They included exclusive worship of God, prohibition of idolatry, respect for God's name, and the observance of the Sabbath. On the social side, the commandments instructed honor towards parents, prohibition of murder, adultery, theft, false testimony, and covetousness. These commandments formed the foundation of Israelite legislation and profoundly influenced future civil and religious laws of Israel. They were more than rules. They were a reflection of God's character and an invitation for the people of Israel to live according to His will. The first commandment establishes the foundation of the entire law. There shall be no other gods before me. This commandment demands the exclusive worship of God, rejecting idolatry and religious syncretism common in neighboring cultures. The second commandment forbids the making and worship of images or idols, emphasizing that God should not be represented by any physical form or created object. This commandment distinguishes between true and false worship, highlighting the danger of idolatry and the need for faithfulness to God. The third commandment establishes reverence for God's name, requiring God's people to treat His name with the utmost respect and reverence. Obeying this commandment reinforces the need for a life of integrity and reverence, where words and actions reflect a deep respect for the Creator. The fourth commandment, the seventh commandment, is based on God's creation pattern, where He rested on the seventh day after creating the heavens and earth. This commandment serves as a sign of trust in God and a reminder of the covenant between Him and His people. It represents the peace and perfect communion with God, which would be fully realized in the future. The fifth commandment deals with interpersonal relationships, beginning with the family. It emphasizes the importance of respecting and caring for parents, as they play a vital role in raising and educating children. Honoring parents goes beyond obedience and involves an attitude of respect, care, and appreciation, especially in old age. In the context of Israel, maintaining honor and respect for parents was essential for social cohesion and the continuity of faith and religious traditions. The sixth commandment, the seventh commandment, prohibits murder, protecting the sacred value of human life created in the image of God. This prohibition reinforces the principle that life belongs to God and only He has authority over it. It also implies a broader responsibility to preserve and protect life, promoting justice and avoiding unnecessary violence. In the New Testament, Jesus expanded this understanding by teaching that even anger and hatred are forms of violating this commandment, as they are the seeds of murder. The seventh commandment is clear and straightforward. Do not commit adultery. This commandment protects the sanctity of marriage and establishes conjugal fidelity as a fundamental principle of community life. Adultery is not only a moral transgression, but also a violation of the covenant of trust and loyalty between husband and wife, which God ordained from creation. In conclusion, the commandments of the Israelites emphasize the importance of respecting and honoring their parents, the importance of avoiding violence, and the importance of maintaining a healthy relationship with God. Note: the Ten Commandments emphasize the importance of loyalty, integrity, justice, honesty, and integrity in human relationships. Jesus emphasized that even impure desire and lust are forms of adultery in the heart, emphasizing the need for cultivating purity and integrity in actions and thoughts. The sanctity of marriage is a reflection of the holiness God demands from His people in all spheres of life. The eighth commandment, "You shall not steal," protects property rights and promotes justice and honesty in human relations. This commandment covers not only direct theft, but also any form of dishonesty that deprives another person of what rightfully belongs to them. In a society where mutual trust was essential for survival, the prohibition against theft aimed to maintain integrity and social cohesion. Integrity in human relations is reflected in the just and honest relationship that God desires with His people. The ninth commandment forbids false testimony against one's neighbor, protecting their reputation and honor and upholding truth in all circumstances. This promotes a culture of justice and trust, essential for harmonious living. The 10th commandment addresses internal desires, focusing on the intense desire to possess something that belongs to someone else. Covetousness is seen as the root of many other sins, such as theft and adultery. The prohibition of covetousness teaches that contentment is essential for a righteous and godly life, as it can lead to disobedience to other commandments. In conclusion, the 10 Commandments emphasize the importance of loyalty, integrity, justice, honesty, and trust in God's provision. Objection to God begins in the heart, where desires and motivations are formed after God's will. The 10 Commandments were given to the people of Israel, causing fear and reverence. They witnessed thunder, lightning, and smoke on Mount Sinai and were terrified. This fear was not just a fear of God's power, but also a recognition of His holiness and seriousness of His laws. The Israelites asked Moses to be the mediator between them and God, fearing that if they continued to hear God's voice directly, they would die. Moses then resumed his role as intermediary, conveying God's words to the people. This profound experience of fear and reverence served to imprint God's commandments on the people's heart, highlighting the importance of following God's instructions. The fear and reverence that the people experienced were appropriate in the face of the revelation of God's law, reflecting the holiness and divine authority that demand respect and obedience. God instructed Moses to build the tabernacle, a mobile sanctuary that would serve as the meeting place between God and his people. The tabernacle was designed according to a heavenly pattern shown to Moses on Mount Sinai, with every detail carefully planned to reflect God's holiness and glory. The tabernacle was not just a physical structure, but a symbol of God's presence among his people during their journey through the wilderness. The people of Israel, impatient with the delay in receiving the tablets of the law, convinced Aaron to make a golden calf for worship. This act of idolatry revealed the people's tendency to stray from God and revert to pagan practices. God's anger burned against Israel because of this sin, and he prepared to destroy them and start a new nation through Moses. Moses interceded for the people, asking God to forgive them, even erasing his name from the book of life. This intercession saved Israel from immediate destruction and restored the broken relationship between God and his people. In Hebrews 7:25, God's mercy is a central theme in the relationship between God and Israel. After the episode of the golden calf, God instructed Moses to ascend Mount Sinai and take 2 new stone tablets to rewrite the 10 Commandments. This act symbolized the renewal of the covenant between God and Israel, showing that despite the people's grievous sin, God was willing to give them a second chance. The renewal of the tablets was an act of grace and reaffirmation of the divine covenant on Mount Sinai. The second chance given to Israel is a testament to God's enduring love and willingness to forgive and restore those who repent. The 10 Commandments were not just isolated rules, but served as the foundation of the entire Mosaic law. They encompassed every aspect of Israel's life, from worship and religious ceremonies to civil and moral issues. The Mosaic law was given to shape Israel into a holy nation distinct from other nations, reflecting God's character in all their practices. The 10 Commandments had a profound impact on Israelite society, shaping its identity and governing every aspect of its communal life. They were not just religious rules, but fundamental principles that influenced civil laws, social justice, and interpersonal relationships. They established a standard of living aimed at promoting justice, peace, and holiness within the nation. The application of the 10 Commandments in Israel's laws and customs helped create a society that was distinct from the surrounding pagan nations, standing out for its justice and dedication to the Lord. The commandments also established a covenant of mutual responsibility among the members of the Israelite community, aiming for the well-being of the entire society. In the New Testament, the 10 Commandments remain relevant and are reaffirmed by the teachings of Jesus and the apostles. Jesus summarized the commandments into 2 great principles: loving God with all your heart and loving your neighbor as yourself. For more biblical content, click on the related video. Please subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching.